Yeah.
You're looking at your phone, staring at a familiar name on the screen. You're an accomplished adult. You make hard decisions every day. You lead teams. You pay your own bills. But in the 3 seconds before you answer that call, your shoulders drop, your chest tightens, and your voice shifts half an octave higher. You haven't even said hello yet, but you're already smiling, a smile you don't mean, and preparing to apologize for something you didn't do.
Yeah, it's a profoundly quiet moment, isn't it?
It really is.
But beneath that silence, I mean,
Yeah.
there is a massive internal shift happening. Because in those 3 seconds, you are completely disappearing in real time.
Wow, yeah, disappearing.
Right, you're stripping away your own preferences, your own boundaries, your own reality, simply to make another person comfortable.
And it feels so incredibly familiar, almost like slipping on an old, heavy coat.
Exactly.
But there are really two honest ways to read what is actually happening in the shadows of that moment. You could look at it and say, well, this is just the deep relational desire to be a quote-unquote good family member.
Right, the peacemaker.
Yeah, you're doing the emotional labor required to keep the peace at all costs because fundamentally you value the connection.
Yeah.
And in a flawed family, I mean, someone has to be the shock absorber.
Someone has to do it, yeah. Or, you could look at the exact same moment and realize this isn't a relational choice at all.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, it's actually an involuntary biological survival reflex.
A reflex.
Yeah, a reflex that is completely hijacking your body's nervous system long before your conscious adult mind even has a chance to weigh in on the situation.
See, when you are the one holding the phone, though, it feels entirely relational.
Sure, it feels like a choice.
It feels like you are consciously playing a role, like you are performing the duties of the peacemaker, putting your own needs on the back burner just to stabilize the family's emotional economy.
Right.
It feels like a sacrifice made out of love, or at the very least, an act of sheer preservation to keep the family unit from just, fracturing.
It absolutely feels like a conscious sacrifice in the moment. I mean, the psychological and neurobiological reality, however, tells a remarkably different story.
How so?
Because you aren't deciding to change your voice or drop your shoulders in those 3 seconds. You aren't weighing the pros and cons of appeasement.
Right.
Your body is running a highly sophisticated survival program that was installed decades ago. And, it's executing that program without your permission.
Which is wild to think about. We are ultimately looking at the lasting imprint of dysfunctional or narcissistic family systems.
Yes, heavily.
It really comes down to this intense, exhausting tension between two very different urges fighting for control inside of you. On one side, you have the urge to fawn, to erase yourself, to appease, to just go along with whatever narrative keeps the volatility at bay.
Exactly. Keep the peace.
But then on the other side, there's the urge to be the whistleblower.
Oh, yeah. The truth teller.
Right. To point out the toxic dynamics, to name the dysfunction out loud, and to basically risk losing the family entirely in exchange for the truth.
And that underlying tension is exactly why adulthood, for so many people, ends up feeling like this never-ending performance.
Totally.
You find yourself constantly oscillating between over-functioning for everyone else around you and feeling totally alienated from your true, authentic self.
You present as highly competent on the outside.
Right, but inside you carry this lingering sensation that you are just faking it, just waiting to be found out.
If you like sitting with questions that don't resolve easily, you're in the right place.
Okay, let's unpack this relational side first, because the urge to protect the family is so deeply ingrained in us.
It's powerful.
It is. When we look at this through the lens of relationships and emotional labor, we see that we actually construct what psychology refers to as a pseudo-self.
A false self, essentially.
Right. We build this mask because we fundamentally crave connection. And in certain environments, showing up with authenticity actually costs you that connection. Because a pseudo-self is organized entirely around survival. It's about environmental scanning rather than any internal compass of what you actually want or need.
Exactly. And in a family system that prioritizes the parent's emotional needs over the child's development, the child realizes early on that there is like a job opening in the house.
Oh, that's a great way to put it, a job opening.
Yeah. Someone needs to be the caretaker. Someone needs to be the peacekeeper to stabilize the emotional temperature of the room. So we step into that role. We take the job.
We do what we have to do.
And this connects directly to this broader cultural concept we see everywhere now, toxic positivity.
Oh, absolutely.
But we often talk about toxic positivity in corporate settings, right? The whole good vibes only HR policies.
Yeah.
But it's chilling to think about that being the foundational currency of a family system.
It is. because it operates as a silencing mechanism.
Right.
If a family's primary currency is toxic positivity, then any expression of genuine grief or frustration or critique, it's all treated as an existential threat to the family's image.
The family essentially rewards the good daughters and the good sons who don't rock the boat. You learn very quickly that harmony is the toll you have to pay to earn love and acceptance.
Yeah, compliance equals safety.
Exactly. If you are agreeable, if you force a smile while swallowing your own discomfort, you are safe. So from that relational viewpoint, fawning feels like pragmatic, conscious choice you are making over and over again to protect the relationship from collapsing.
That narrative of choice is powerful. I mean, it really is. But the research points to a mechanism that operates far below our conscious decision-making.
Below the consciousness. Okay.
Right. What's fascinating here is that this response is purely neurobiological. Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, he coined a brilliant term for this mechanism.
Which is?
Neuroception.
Neuroception. Okay, meaning the nervous system's perception, bypassing the brain's cognitive perception entirely.
Is the core of it, yes. Your autonomic nervous system is acting like a radar dish.
Just constantly scanning.
Constantly scanning the environment for cues of safety or danger, long before your prefrontal cortex, the logical thinking part of your brain even gets involved.
Yeah.
So when you see that specific name pop up on your phone, or you hear a microscopic shift in a parent's tone of voice, your nervous system interprets that as a life-threatening danger.
Life-threatening, really?
Literally, it activates a defensive state in milliseconds.
Which, that completely reframes the guilt so many people feel.
How so?
Well, you know intellectually that you are a safe, capable adult. But when the body overrides the mind that quickly, you're essentially judging yourself for a biological reflex.
You're blaming yourself for biology.
Exactly. You're wondering why you can't just be strong when your body is reacting as if a lion just walked into the room.
Right, let's translate the mechanics of that reflex, because Porges describes the fawn response as a dorsal vagal override masked by social engagement.
Okay, that's a lot of terminology. Break that down for us.
Sure. So the vagus nerve functions a bit like your body's brake pedal. When your nervous system senses that you are trapped, meaning you can't fight your way out and you can't run away, it slams on those brakes.
So you just stop.
Yeah, it sends you into a state of freeze or collapse, which is the dorsal vagal response. But because we are social mammals, we evolved a mechanism to mask that collapse.
Ah, the social engagement part.
Yes. Your body is internally shut down in a state of absolute terror, but your face is forced to smile, to nod, to placate, just to survive the interaction.
That is incredible.
To the outside world, it looks like friendliness and compliance. But underneath, the nervous system has completely collapsed into survival mode.
That distinction is so crucial because we need to be really clear that fawning is totally different from people-pleasing. We use those terms interchangeably in pop psychology all the time, but the mechanics are worlds apart.
Radically different.
Yeah.
I mean, people-pleasing is a habit. It is additive.
Additive, right.
You are adding a layer of accommodation on top of your existing self to smooth things over, and it operates consciously. You can pause, recognize you are people-pleasing, and choose to stop doing it.
But fawning is subtractive.
Exactly. You literally erase yourself to survive. Your preferences, your boundaries, your ability to say no, they don't just get pushed aside politely. They become completely inaccessible to your brain in that moment.
Because it's a reflex.
It is a biological reflex, not a character flaw. And if we zoom out to look at Bowen family systems theory, we start to see why this neurobiological reflex is so incredibly hard to break free from in adulthood.
Let's talk about Bowen.
Murray Bowen theorized that a family isn't just a group of individuals living under one roof. It actually functions as a single emotional organism.
An emotional unit with its own homeostasis, right? Where everyone is interconnected like organs in a body.
Precisely. And every organism is governed by two counterbalancing life forces, the force toward togetherness and the force toward individuality.
Okay, so pushing and pulling.
Right. In a healthy system, there is room for both. But in a highly anxious, dysfunctional family, the force for togetherness becomes suffocating.
It's like assimilation.
Exactly. There's an unspoken, rigid demand that everyone think alike, act alike, and feel alike. If one person tries to shift their role or express individuality, the entire system feels a spike in anxiety and moves to force that person back into their designated box.
Which explains why setting a boundary feels so overwhelmingly dangerous.
It feels like life or death.
Yeah, because if the family is a single organism, then trying to set a healthy boundary isn't just a personal choice you're making for your own well-being, To the family, it feels like an attack on the whole organism.
Right, an existential threat.
It's like an immune system attacking a cure because it mistakes it for a virus. You try to heal the family by speaking the truth or setting a basic limit on how you'll be spoken to, but the family treats you like a pathogen that needs to be neutralized, isolated, or expelled.
That is a perfect analogy. The system reacts to health as if it were a disease.
It's tragic, really.
It is. The anxiety spreads like a contagion, and the family will use any means necessary to pull you back into the fawning role just to lower the system's overall anxiety. And we see the long-term compounding effects of this in very specific real-life patterns.
Like what?
Well, let's look closely at the fawn response and what happens when a child is subjected to parentification.
Okay, yeah. We talk a lot about parentification culturally, usually focusing on the surface level stuff. A child taking on adult chores, raising their siblings, or managing the household.
Physical labor.
Right. But seeing it as the origin point for the fawn response shifts the perspective entirely. You aren't just taking on the laundry, you're taking on the psychological burden of managing the family's emotional thermostat.
And that emotional management has profound developmental consequences.
I can imagine.
When you are forced to navigate complex family dynamics and soothe adult emotional volatility at a young age, you develop what clinical psychology calls inflated responsibility.
Inflated responsibility, meaning you feel responsible for everything.
Everything. You internalize the core belief that your actions, and your actions alone, are entirely responsible for the emotional stability of everyone around you.
You wire your brain to believe that you have to be perfect to prevent an emotional catastrophe.
Exactly. And that wiring doesn't magically disappear when you turn 18.
Unfortunately not.
A fascinating study out of Turkey recently looked at the specific connection between this childhood parentification and the development of obsessive-compulsive disorder, particularly relationship OCD, or ROCD, in adulthood.
I've heard of ROCD in passing, usually in the context of people constantly doubting if they are with the quote-unquote right partner. But how does that connect back to the childhood fawning reflex?
ROCD involves persistent, agonizing, intrusive doubts and preoccupations about your romantic relationship.
Okay.
It's not just normal relationship anxiety, it's a compulsive need to monitor the connection. The researchers looked at the methodology of how the brain's pattern recognition software gets coded in childhood.
And what did they find?
They found that parentified children learn to be hypervigilant to tiny, microscopic potential risks in order to maintain family harmony.
So if a parent's heavy sigh or a slammed cabinet door meant a screaming match was coming when you were 7, your brain coded that as a life or death threat.
Yes, precisely.
And then you transfer that exact same hypervigilance to your adult romantic partners.
The transfer of hypervigilance is the key mechanism. Because your brain was wired early on to perceive interpersonal connection as a source of threat, and as a job you have to perfectly manage, you are constantly scanning your adult partner's moves.
So even if nothing is actually wrong.
Right. If your partner is just quiet because they had a long day at work, your pattern recognition software misinterprets that quietness as an impending emotional explosion.
Wow.
You obsess over their flaws, or you constantly doubt the relationship's stability because your cognitive baseline is that love requires you to constantly overfunction to prevent disaster.
That neurological rewiring explains why fawning feels impossible to just turn off. It's deeply embedded survival software. But, the human brain also has a fundamental, undeniable drive for authenticity, which inevitably creates a breaking point.
It always does.
When the sheer exhaustion of erasing yourself finally outweighs the paralyzing fear of conflict, the nervous system shifts gears. That's when you step away from the fawn and into the role of the whistleblower.
You finally point out the emotional neglect. You name the unspoken favoritism.
Right.
You call out the toxic behaviors that everyone else has spent decades meticulously ignoring. You demand that the family look at the reality of what is happening.
But instead of the family having a moment of clarity or thanking you for bringing this to light, you get completely gaslit.
Immediately.
You become the scapegoat. The family doesn't want to change the status quo because confronting the dysfunction would require them to look at their own deeply painful truths. So they project all of their discomfort onto you.
They make you the sick one.
Yeah, they rewrite the narrative so that you are the problem. They tell you that you are overreacting, or that you're too sensitive, or that you are just determined to cause drama and ruin every holiday.
They utilize what is essentially a violence of silence.
A violence of silence, what does that look like?
Well, there is a brilliant analysis of Marcia Norman's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Night, Mother, that illustrates the mechanics of this beautifully.
Oh, I've heard of that play.
Yeah, the play explores a deeply dysfunctional family dynamic in the 1980s, which was a time when the myth of the perfect family was heavily enforced culturally. Any abnormality was treated as a severe social stain.
So families retreated behind closed doors and just pretended everything was fine, no matter how bad it actually was.
Exactly. And in the play, the mother uses a tactic called discursive evasion. She actively, aggressively avoids meaningful, emotional conversation.
To protect the image.
Right. While her daughter is in a state of profound despair, trying to speak the truth about her life, the mother chats about hot chocolate, knitting, and superficial neighborhood gossip.
That sounds infuriating.
It is. She hides behind toxic positivity, even concealing her daughter's medical history of epilepsy, just to maintain the outward illusion of a normal, happy family.
So the silence isn't just an absence of words.
No, the silence is a weapon. It is a form of structural violence. It suppresses trauma, invalidates reality, and normalizes severe dysfunction by simply refusing to acknowledge that it even exists.
And the person who refuses to participate in that discursive evasion, the one who refuses to stay silent, bears the entire psychological weight of it.
They carry it all.
The whistleblower carries the massive emotional burden of all the family's unspoken truths. In the play, the tragedy isn't just the daughter's despair, it's the fact that she is completely deprived of the right to speak her truth and have it witnessed within that silent system.
It's devastating.
In real life, the whistleblower is isolated, rejected, and forced to hold the heavy reality that the rest of the family simply refuses to look at.
More people carry both sides of this than you'd think.
It is an incredibly heavy burden to bear, whether you are shrinking yourself down to a fraction of your size to survive, or screaming the truth into a void and being treated like you're crazy. So what does this all mean?
That's the big question.
How do we hold these two conflicting, agonizing realities without letting them tear us apart?
I think the most important, immediate step is removing the shame.
The shame is so heavy.
It is. But there is no right side of this tension, and there is no wrong way you survived your environment. You do not have to carry an ounce of shame for the fawn response.
But it feels so deeply shameful. It feels like cowardice or weakness when you're a fully grown adult who can manage a corporate team of 50 people or negotiate complex contracts, but you physically cannot find the words to tell your mom you don't want to come over for Sunday dinner.
I know. It feels like weakness because our culture prizes overt strength. But the fawn response is actually a sign of remarkable psychological creativity.
Creativity.
Yes. Judith Herman, a pioneering trauma researcher, points to this brilliantly. Think about the profound relational intelligence it took for your child self to learn how to meticulously read a volatile adult's moods.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
You learned to anticipate escalations before they even happened. And you modulated your own behavior in real time, adjusting your tone, your posture, your facial expressions, just to manage their emotional state.
It's basically a superpower born entirely out of necessity.
It kept you safe. It allowed you to navigate a deeply unpredictable, chaotic, and potentially dangerous environment. Crucially, it maintained your attachment to your caregiver, which is not a choice, but a strict biological imperative for a child's survival.
You literally couldn't survive without them.
Right. The fawn response is not a weakness. It is a profound, life-saving gift that your child self gave to your adult self to ensure you made it to today.
That reframing changes everything. And equally, you do not have to be ashamed of the whistleblower part of you. You don't have to feel guilty for being the one who is exhausted by the toxic positivity, completely tired of the suffocating, violent silence, and desperate to just scream the truth into the room so someone else has to look at it.
Both the fawn and the whistleblower are entirely valid, logical reactions to an impossible, illogical situation.
The tension here isn't a failure on your part, it's just genuinely deeply human. We live in society and family structures that actively incentivize the fawn. They reward you with titles like good daughter or devoted son when you successfully erase your own needs.
They absolutely do.
And those exact same structures viciously, ruthlessly punish the whistleblower, labeling you difficult, selfish, or unhinged for daring to have boundaries. You are caught in a perfectly constructed double bind.
And you don't have to force a tidy resolution to this tension today. You don't have to immediately sever all ties with your family to prove you're healed, and you don't have to achieve perfect, impenetrable boundaries overnight to understand yourself better.
That takes the pressure off.
It should. Healing isn't about eradicating the fawn response entirely. It is about building nervous system flexibility. It's about slowly expanding your window of tolerance so that eventually fawning becomes just one available tool in your kit rather than an involuntary, unstoppable reflex.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
This deep dive isn't really just about why your heart races and your voice changes when you talk to your mother on the phone.
it's much deeper.
When you look at the mechanics of all of this, it touches on the most fundamental, universal human themes we have: identity and belonging.
Because we desperately need both of those things to survive. We need to know who we are, and we need to know we belong to a tribe.
We do. And this tension is fundamentally about the terrifying human fear of being unloved if we are truly, authentically seen. Fawning is the tragic, heartbreaking compromise we make with the universe.
What's the compromise?
We agree to erase our identity in order to guarantee our belonging. We decide, based on the data of our childhood, that it is better to be safe, loved, and completely hidden than to be real and risk being abandoned.
And whistleblowing is the exact opposite calculation.
Whistleblowing is the terrifying leap into the total unknown. It is the courageous, often agonizing act of claiming your identity.
Standing your ground.
It is insisting on the validity of your own reality, even if it means you might stop belonging to the only family you've ever known. It is choosing the truth over safety.
If this conversation felt true for you, both sides of it, you're always welcome here. You can subscribe to Leone Patterns and keep sitting with us.
It's an incredibly heavy thing to carry, holding both of those urges at once. But recognizing the mechanics of why you carry them is profound.
Before we wrap up, it leaves you with a profound question to sit with. If your pseudo-self, that carefully constructed fawning mask, is the one currently receiving all the love, praise, and acceptance from your family, whose life are you actually living?
That's a heavy thought.
Let's just sit quietly with where we've been today. On one hand, we have the deep neurobiological reality of the fawn response. It is your body's brilliant, involuntary, ancient strategy to protect you by erasing you. It is a nervous system adaptation that kept you safe when your environment was volatile, when the adults around you were unpredictable, and when your belonging was entirely conditional.
And on the other hand, we have the whistleblower. That deep, irrepressible, authentically human need to assert your reality. The need to break the violent, discursive silence of a dysfunctional system and to demand that the truth be brought into the light, despite the immense, painful cost of being scapegoated by the people you love.
Neither of these parts of you is wrong. Neither side is the winner of your internal struggle. There is so much grace to be found in simply giving yourself permission to step back and just observe your own reactions. To notice the tightness in your chest, the shift in your voice, or the urge to apologize when the phone rings, and to say to yourself, I see you trying to protect me, without needing to judge it, shame it, or immediately fix it.
And recognizing these systemic invisible forces, whether it's the rapid biological pull of neuroception, the structural pressure of toxic positivity, the transfer of hypervigilance and ROCD, or the emotional gravity of Bowen's family homeostasis, that recognition is the very first step toward genuine freedom. When you can clearly name the invisible mechanics acting upon you, they slowly begin to lose their absolute power over you.
Same pace, same question. See you then.